Welcome to Midlife Catalyst, a place where ordinary people share extraordinary stories. I'm Amanda Younts, and I am so excited about today's guest. I have known her pretty much my whole life. She is from my hometown and shares many similarities in our journeys to this point in life, but also has her own stories and experiences to share. And you might be thinking, how many people are you going to get from Ardmore, this small town that has had such tragedy and parents that die and people that die and sobriety stories? And I just have to say, I'm not sure why, but I've alluded to it before on here. It's very unusual, but other places, I have friends all over the country, do not have the level of death and cancer and stories that we seem to have experienced. I don't know why, but one of these days I will figure it out along this journey. So I will stop rambling and let today's guest share her story. So Emily Williams Kelly is a mom. She is an assistant principal to over 650 5 through 11-year-olds, and she is just trying to be better than she was yesterday, which is what I always strive for as well. Emily, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. I'm so grateful to be here. One of the things that I know that both you and I have in common is that we don't have any more immediate family. I lost my dad in 2002. I think I was 27, and it was very, very sudden. I say sudden. He had just the Friday before he passed away on that Sunday, May 19th, 2002, he had a MRI, and they had found a spot on his brain. So he had that done and called me, and, he was such a big man and very arthritic, and he couldn't do a lay down MRI. So they had one in, I think, McKinney or Allen, Texas, that he was able to stand up in, pretty sure. But anyway, he was talking about just the pain that he was in and just different things like that. And he went on that Sunday to his school, and with his little dog Bitsy, my mom and dad rescued Bichon's, and he took a nap and never woke up. So it was really sudden. And at that point of my life, I was very heavy into my alcoholism. And so for me, my coping mechanism at that point was, well, I'm just going to drink. And
Right.
thinking that would help. It was definitely one of those where it was tough, and at that point I had never had any, I've lost grandparents and stuff like that, but nothing to compare that kind of heartache and distraught. And I was teaching in Houston, and it was my last full week of school, and I had to leave. I had to go be with my mom. And then at that point, I made the decision that I was going to just come back to Plano and be with her. Just try to figure everything else out. But that was when I feel like it was, obviously it was a huge problem before then, but I think I had my first blackout drunk when I'm embarrassed to say, I think maybe 17, 16. And then it just continued. I want to also say I am not trying to make my past like, ooh, it was fun. I had a good time until I didn't. And hurt a lot of people. And I never in a million years would have thought that when I was doing my inventory, when I got sober on April 21st, 2009, that I would be looking back going, it was so freaking selfish. I never thought of me as a selfish person. And I feel like that was something that I really had to look and think back and realize the people that I hurt unwillingly. It was unwilling and unprovoked. And so unfortunately, that's kind of where I was. I did get sober. I hit my rock bottom. Well, I think I hit many rock bottoms.
Right.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I feel
I
like
don't
that
necessarily buy into there's one big rock bottom, because
No.
That wasn't it for me at all. Yeah.
I mean, this is part of my story. And I will say that everything I mentioned in this next part, I've always told my employers, everything. But like when I turned 30, I got 2 PIs and a DUI all within I think it was less than a year. And, my mom always said, if you go to jail, don't call me. And I didn't call her. I called my brother. And I'll never forget when I got my first arrest. And I'm not proud of these. However, they are part of my journey. It's who it is, and it just makes up who I am as a person. But my brother I was in Richardson, Texas, and he came. It was a Saturday. I'm pretty sure that he was in Van Alstyne coaching. And so he had to drive down after watching film on a Saturday and come get me out. And I'll never forget, he walked me out and we got in the car and he just shook his head and he handed me something. He goes, "This is from Mom." And I was like, "Oh, what is it?" And he goes, "It was a book called What Would Jesus Do?" And I joked and I was like, well, he wouldn't have done what I did. But we laughed, and I always tried to make the best of any situation. And there was a point where, I believe it was April the 21st, I was on the phone with my mom at 2:00 in the morning. And who does that? I mean, who was drunk on the phone with their mom at 2:00 in the morning? And what mom would answer the phone? I unfortunately had a 1-car incident. I guess I hit a guardrail, flipped my car. I don't remember any of it. And once again, not proud of this moment of mine. However, took that particular thing apparently my little flip phone flew out of the car. It was broke. And there was a young man behind me that saw it happen, heard the phone ring, was able to answer it. It was my mom. And he was able to tell her, hey, she's alive and they're going to take her to the hospital in Plano. And I woke up and she was standing over me and I just looked at her. I said, I think I need help. I think I need something. And I went to my first AA meeting that day, and I stood outside of the meeting I think I missed the first one because I was just so is this really happening? One of my dear friends that I grew up with, that my parents grew up with in Ardmore, I had her number, and she had a long time ago, years before this, had told me that I needed to get the big book. And I went, big book? And so she just told me, she said, listen, she goes, you got to do it. You have to. And she told me, she said, there's going to be 3 ways you're going to end up: dead, in jail, or you can get sober. And I really wanted to, I wanted to have that part of my life behind me. Yes. By the grace of God, I did not get any charges for my incident. I don't know how that happened. I don't question. I'm grateful that no one else was involved. When I went and looked at the car the next day, there's no way that I should have walked away from that. But I did. And I'm here to tell my story, my experience, strength, and hope. And I've been grateful to be able to do that for 16 years. And it's not easy. Yeah.
It's not easy.
When I first got sober.
Wow. I just hit 5, so that's amazing.
Hey, people don't realize that when you're doing the right thing, it's still hard. It's still one of those things that you just have to step back and be like, I've got to show myself grace. And you do it. Just like I'd show everybody else the grace, I got to show myself that. And I don't do that perfectly. So I'm a work in progress. Progress over perfection. When I first got sober, I remember thinking, okay, this is not going to be hard, whatever. And I can remember driving when I would go to meetings or go home from work or whatever. I would have to stay in the center lane. And because if I got in the right lane, there's a 7-Eleven up there. I'll go get a case of beer and go home and drink it myself. If I go to get in the left hand, there's a Kroger. I'll just run in there and go get it. So I was like, I'd stay in the center lane. And then when I got to where I needed, I'd hope and pray that nobody was behind me. But, the gratitude that I feel that I was given a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance at just different things in my life is something that I will never, be ungrateful for, because it's led me to so many amazing possibilities, and just knowing that this is the life that I was meant to lead. And so that's definitely something that I'm very grateful for. And then if you fast forward, I'm grateful I met Nova's dad. We got married, and I was told that I'd never have kids. And about 3 years after we were married, I had been having some female issues, and my doctor, Dr. Sadler, Sean Sadler, an old Ardmore girl, we had scheduled my hysterectomy on October 17th, 2013. And I went home that night and I was like, something's just not right. And I didn't tell Sean about what I was kind of feeling, but I stopped and I was like, I've never been pregnant before, so let me just take a test. It's probably nothing, but might as well. And I did, and it was positive. And I still didn't tell him, because I was like, nope, I'm going to go to Kroger and I'm going to get 7 more, and we're going to just double check and triple check and all that good stuff. And so on October 17th, 2013, we found out that we were going to be parents. It just, I'll never forget calling my mom, because the next day we were looking at moving to New England and to Newport, Rhode Island. And I was had done research on how to get my certifications there. It's like a slap in the face. And it was like God just saying, I'm going to need you to slow your roll. You stop trying to plan your life. I've got you. And looking back now at that moment, I didn't realize at the time how pivotal October 17th, 2013 was. But at that moment, I truly believed that God knew all the things that were going to happen and what I possibly needed. Because I'm not 100% sure that if I didn't have Nova, that I would have 15 years of sobriety.
That is the power of some of those most famous sober slogans. I tend to throw them out and people are like, that's great. I'm like, oh yeah,
I love
it's
them.
not my. But truly, as the control freak of let go and let God, that those God
100%.
shots of you've got to sometimes take a step back and let things come to you rather than trying to dictate and control your life. And if you don't listen, that whatever it is, it's going to come louder until you do stop and listen.
I totally agree. And it's just one of those moments. And I don't remember getting emotional talking about stuff like this. So I don't want to apologize because it is what it is.
It is.
But I truly believe that at that moment, and I didn't even realize it. And honestly, I don't know that I realized it until just now, in looking back and piecing things together. And just about fast forward to November of 2017, my mom, she hadn't had a mammogram since 1983. She told me, she was like, I'm not getting one. I am fine. Whatever happens, it is what it is. That kind of stuff. Her mother, my mom's mom, passed away when my mom was 11 of breast cancer. And so she just was like, nope, I'm not going to do it.
My parents were very much the same way.
Yeah. It's just one of those.
But you know what? They didn't have any health problems until it was too late. There was no build up. It was just, oh yeah, I've got cancer. We're done. Okay.
Yeah. And at the back of your mind, and I know this was how my mom was, okay. She was bubbly and chipper and would do anything for anybody, but taking care of herself was not always something that she did. Right. However, I do have a really quick story. This is a Miss Linda moment. So after my dad passed away, she started not feeling great. I mean, obviously, but she was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And this is not funny. I'm not laughing about this, but there's no telling how long she had type 2 diabetes. Let's be honest. She never went to the doctor. we would go to restaurants and she would just walk up and she would say, "Sweetie, my blood sugar is running a little low. Can we just sit over there and go ahead and order? I'm so sorry." And they would every single time, "Ma'am, you just come right in here." And I would sit down and I would be like, "Seriously?" I'd be like, "There's no telling how long you've had blood sugar issues."
Right.
And right now you're like, and you get away with it.
Of course she would.
Of course. Of course she did. Little Linda. But yeah, so she was diagnosed. I want to say might have been like the very end of October or middle of November. I don't remember the exact date. But, and so we came up with a plan. At the beginning, she was like, "I'm not doing anything." My mother-in-law, Jane, who one of the best people I know, like she is my surrogate mother. She is, regardless of what has transpired between Sean and I, she is my rock. Like she is to this day, like she is just the best. But we were somewhere and Nova and Hayden and Hadley were doing something. I don't remember where we were. And I just remember Jane looking at my mom and was like, "You want to not fight for that?" And that's all it took. And my mom was like, let's beat this bitch." And so she did. She started chemo and she did great. She would go to chemo and then she would come stay with us for a couple of days just because I didn't want her to be by herself. And she got to hang out with Nova and, she loved that. And then if that couldn't have topped the cake, my mother was actually had to go to the ER one day. It was December 3rd. And my mother was in the ER in McKinney. I was in Plano. My brother had just been taken to a hospital in McKinney as well, off 380. He had been having some issues and he was diagnosed with colon rectal cancer. And my sister-in-law called me, told me I was going to the emergency room to take care of mom. And I just remember I was like, I can't tell mom right now. Right. I was like, wait, once again, that is not my story to tell and I'm not going to be a part of it. But we got it all taken care of and Bart started his chemo right after that and continued on through football season. And he would do chemo on Mondays and then he wore a chemo pouch and for 3 days, but he never missed a beat. He showed up every day to work. And I just can remember to myself thinking, if they can do this, then I can do whatever they need to support them. We just did it as a family and did what we could. But there's only been one time where I ever sat there and thought, I need a drink. And that was when Nova was like 3 weeks old. And I'll never forget, I hadn't slept in probably 3 days. And I remember standing in the middle of our kitchen and I was holding her and Sean was in front of me. It was probably about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I said, "Come get this baby. I got to go to bed or I'm going to a bar. It's either one." And he was like, "Give me the kid." But yeah. And things were going really good. I'll never forget, Bart was in the hospital for something and he got a phone call. And I thought everything that happened, I don't think Bart and Allison and the girls ever had to cook a meal. And I'm not exaggerating, for probably 2 years. And that made me feel good because I knew that they were taken care of. But just financially, Bart had never, ever gotten cancer insurance in his however long he'd been coaching and teaching. Never. He never. And that particular August, when he signed up, he was like, "You know what? I mean, it can't hurt." And he had cancer insurance. It just crazy stuff. But I thought it was funny, but he got a phone call. He was in the hospital for something. And this person said, "Hey, this is so-and-so from," I don't even remember where it was from, but Bart had done fantasy football. And
Of course.
he won $50. And they called and they were like, "We're going to invite you and your family to Florida this weekend." And he just sat there and he was like, "Well, that's not going to happen." And he explained to him, he was like, "Unfortunately, I can't do that, but send me the money." And they did. And it's just so weird how things just work out. And that leads us to the end of February, beginning of March of 2018. The last weekend in February, Hayden and Hadley played basketball in Pottsboro, where my sister-in-law coached the girls basketball team. And they were in the playoffs. And it was at Rockwall Heath, their games. And me and Mom and Nova went and watched. And we get there and another coach comes up to us. And Bart was pretty private about that kind of stuff because one, I know he didn't want to worry us and he knew, well, Mom's got this going on. It's one of those things where you do what you need to do, regardless of what we think you need to do. You got to do what you got to do. And now looking back, I completely understand that. But we were sitting in the stands and one of his football coaches came up to us and was like, oh my gosh, how cool is it that Bart got into MD Anderson? And Mom and I were like, huh? And we were like, okay. And Bart had got into MD Anderson for I don't remember, like some trial or something. Mom, just the whole way home, just, oh my gosh, what does that mean? What is that? Like just really, really thought about it. And you could tell that it was one of those things that it bothered her, but she also wanted to give Bart the respect of, I think in the back of her mind, she knew, well, that can't always be good.
Right.
There's probably more going on. And then by this time, I think she had one more treatment that Wednesday. And then she was going to be getting the process of, she didn't want new boobies. She just wanted them off. She was like, I don't need boobs. It's okay. Unfortunately, I talked to her probably, maybe 3 or 4 times a day. I hate to admit that. I probably did. But I'll never forget, like that Wednesday night, I called and she didn't answer. And I thought, well, that's weird. And then I thought, no, she's working. She's probably tired because she leased apartments, which she loved. And she was so good at it. And then Thursday, I tried her and didn't hear from her. But I was like, you know what? I am not going to stress. That's me just being paranoid or whatever. And Friday, I was at school. And during my conference period, where she lived was literally maybe 7 minutes from where I worked. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go check on her. And I could hear the TV blaring and I knew. And I feel like that she knew because right around that point is kind of when Bart started to get better, and then it just went. I think she just knew that there was no way that she could have watched Bart go through that, and I think God just said, you're going to go to sleep, ma'am. And she did. She had a heart attack is what they called it, but she was asleep, and so I just feel that that's what happened. And so up until that point, both Mom and Dad were sudden and quick. And so that's all I knew.
Right.
And so when people would ask me, oh man, thank goodness they didn't suffer, I was like, you are so correct. I was grateful for that because I had no way of knowing what I was in store for when it came to Bart. None. Like for me, that watching that it is painful. I can't imagine. And I'll never forget. At that point, I had also, in that same day that we went to Roy City, I had told my mom, I was like, hey, I think I'm going to get my master's. And she was like, I think you should. And she was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I think I want to be an administrator. And she was like, I think you would be great. And so I started my master's program in June 4th, Nova's birthday. But I started that. Bart and Allison celebrated their anniversary and renewed their vows, and Coach Cooper and Coach Tips and just all these amazing people were there to celebrate them. And it was such a magical moment. They went to New York, just had the best time. And then when they got back, and Bart had walked New York City. I mean, like just walked everywhere and no complaints, no pain. And then unfortunately, when they got back, he was like, I'm not feeling right. And it had spread. So that they got that experience, something that they'd never done before.
Yeah. Watching someone that has been so strong and healthy and, that coach figure to so many people for so long, watching how quickly it takes over your body and just kind of depletes you, can really, it's an experience where it made me reconsider my life and the purpose, of what we're here for.
I totally agree. And I think for me, I would pray all the time. And I mean, I've always been big on my faith. That's something for me personally, something that I'm grateful to my parents that they instilled in me. And I truly believe that, and obviously just my family, that's something that really got me through all of that stuff. But also when I would watch Bart, once again, my selfishness, but I was like, why is this happening to him? Like, why take me? I mean, and like I'm a martyr, seriously. And then I'd stop and I'd be like, well, no, I don't. Hold on. And it's just not. But I was like, this is someone so good and kind and makes such a difference in people's lives. And for me, I would think, well, good gosh. It didn't make any sense. But then at the same time, I had to step back and be like, well, not much does. But
and that's what will drive you crazy if you think you can figure it out or try to make sense of it.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of times where I would be like, it's not my job to try to figure out things like that because there's a bigger picture, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that makes sense. But, I guess he got really, really bad in the beginning of November. And if he would have been able to dress himself and all of these other things, then he would have hopefully been into a trial. And so that's what I hung on to. I was like, oh, you can do this. And I'd pray every day, Lord, just heal him. That's all I wanted. I didn't want him to be suffering and all this stuff. And we had a Christmas the weekend, I guess it would have been about the 28th of November. And so we went to Pottsboro and had dinner and just a fun time. But, he is still, at this point, he was on hospice. And at that point, we kind of knew. But the 30th of November, which was Allison's birthday, she called and she was like, I tried to go up there every weekend just because I wanted to help any way I could and just be with him. And so Allison's birthday is November 30th. I'm hanging out with him. One of his friends from Pauls Valley that he coached with from Pauls Valley, Oklahoma, came and sat with him. And I was able to go watch Hadley play basketball because at this point, Hayden was in her freshman year at Southeastern playing basketball. So I was able to watch Hadley and hang out with the girls. And so that was fun. But the hospice nurse was there and I said, I'll see you Monday. And I'll never forget. She looked at me and she was like, you won't. Yeah. And I remember thinking, well, that's weird. What do you know?
They know a lot. It's pretty scary.
They do know a lot. They know a lot. And so I went and I can just remember in my prayer, I was like, please don't let anything happen on Allison's birthday. And so we were there that Friday night and that Saturday night. And I guess it was probably about 5 o'clock in the morning on the 2nd of December. We were all around him and, he took his last breath. But I think for me, he didn't even make it a year. He was diagnosed December 3rd of the year before. And then December 2nd of 2018. And at that point, I remember thinking, now I know I have something to compare the shortness of death to the long drawn out. And I can tell you from my experience, I don't ever want to see that again.
Oh, me either.
I don't ever want to watch somebody.
Yeah, and you think even a year, but every day, every hour of the year is painful. It really is.
Yes, it is. And it just is something that, and I remember thinking when I was driving home to Plano on the 2nd, I just remember I'm sure people were like, poor girl, what's going on with her? But I remember just kind of, Lord, I prayed for you to heal him. And then I stopped and I was like, you did. You took away every ounce of his pain, and maybe not the way I wanted you to, but, he's with mom and dad. And then I laughed and I was like, I bet mom hadn't stopped talking since he got there.
Well, I do. I could see it and hear. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that was I would say a piece that I struggled with being then you're left. And it's like, well, crap, do I stay here, so to speak? I mean, here I am, and everyone else that I know in my family is somewhere together. What am I going to do and make of my life here? And kind of reshuffling and reconfiguring that identity and purpose in life for me
And
was very
it is
difficult.
hard. And you know what? And I will say that I was genuinely grateful to obviously to have Hayden, Allison, and Hadley. And so I can't imagine, like, I had, one sibling. And so that does make a difference. And so I can't imagine how just literally, like you said, you're just like, well, crap. What do I do?
Right. Yeah.
And I think for me, like, you just figure it out. You do it. Like, you do
That you
it.
have no other choice. That's been one of the things that people, as I carry on, and they're like, well, how did you know what to do? Or, I had no other choice. You have to figure it out. You can't just throw your hands up. And that's where the resiliency piece and community and people that you never even imagined or maybe thought would come into your life or have that support system, they do. And you have to just open up and accept it. For me, that's,
I agree.
you keep showing up.
Well,
And I think
and
too,
also,
just how we were raised, it's so much knowing.
I was just about to say that. Like, can you imagine if we literally, either one of us, like, threw our hands up and we're like, I'm done? Can you imagine? They'd be like, you've lost your mind.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's definitely one of those things where you navigate. And I will say that for me, I handled Dad's death in a totally different way. It was a spiral out of control moment, or moments all put together. Like, I'll never forget. I told this story to my nieces the other day, and I kind of was embarrassed to tell this story, but I was like, whatever. You know me. But I'll never forget, at Dad's funeral, we went to Bodrow's afterwards. Yeah. Actually, we went to Two Frogs, had some dinner and lots of gin, and then went to Bodrow's and had more gin. That was my drink of choice. I'm like an old lady. But I'll never forget going back to Bart and Allison were at Jonna Mosier's, Royce Mosier's house. And so I found out where they were, and I went over there and I opened the door. And I looked at them and I said, well, I've embarrassed God, I've embarrassed my family, and I've embarrassed the Ardmore Tigers. Because that's what my dad would always say every time we left the house. Like, he would, hey, don't embarrass God, your family, or the Ardmore Tigers, or the Wiley Pirates, or wherever. And I just looked, and my brother looked at me and he was like, Lord. I was like, I did. But then to think how I had all these tools of dealing with Mom and Bart. And it's so crazy. I don't want to say that's how normal people handle things. Somebody asked me a while back, they were like, do you ever think that you could drink again? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to take a chance. It's just not worth it to me. I feel like I've done a pretty good job of doing better than I did the day before.
Yep.
And I think that just something like that would just, I don't want to chance it. Like, that's just me.
Oh, yeah. I know. Even if it's like for a fleeting second or moment, because those thoughts don't last. They happen. They don't last as long anymore. But it's like, oh, yeah, I know. So it's not worth it. It's not worth it to the people around me that also really know. I think anyone that says, oh, it won't be that bad, I can assure you it will be that bad, And sometimes I'm like, well, especially early, why not? I mean, again, what else is there? And then you kind of really have to, that's where you step back and look at all you have, all those things that you've made of your life, and it is so much better. And, I don't know that for everyone, but I know for me, and that's all I can control is I know
And
every day is hard, but it's so much better than it was or that it could be.
Totally agree. I agree. And I don't want to rock the boat. I feel like that Nova and I have a good thing going.
Well,
And I
absolutely.
love where I am. I think that, in my opinion, God puts you in places and puts people around you, like you said a minute ago. And I think back in different parts of my journey, and in every specific part, I was in a place where I had enormous amount of support. And even my girls that I grew up with, BJ and Jennifer and Mandy and Julie and Danelle, I mean, like, that drop everything and whatever somebody needed. And I think that kind of goes back to the Ardmore thing. You know, nobody knows it's an Ardmore thing.
Boy, is
I just feel very blessed to be here, one, with you today to share my experience, strength, and hope. And I'm going to continue to do that. That's something, one of your questions, said, what's your why? And I think back to my mom and to my dad and to Bart, and I look at all of those and think, what was the main thing between all of them? And it was just to help, like just to be a servant to someone that might need something better. I try to do that. I don't do it perfectly. And I always tell kids, I'm like, I mess up all the time. And they're like, what? I'm like, oh, you have no idea.
yeah.
That's my why. And, to also try to raise a good human, which I think Sean and I have done a pretty good job. So I think she's a pretty good kid.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I know you sharing your story and being open helped me so much in navigating all the things, sobriety, death. Sometimes you don't know the impact you have on people. And so that's why it's so important for me to not hide. You alluded to that earlier of just being open and transparent with employers and to come on podcasts and share your story, that we get better by opening our mouths. And that's the power you can give to other people.
And it is power. I will never say that, I'm 100% proud of my past, because that wouldn't be true. However, I'm 100% proud of my journey. And I hope that makes sense. Like, that my past does not define me. I have parents that talk about their kids and, oh my gosh, they're struggling or whatever. And I just look at them and I'm like, listen, they're going to get it. Right. They're either going to get it or they're not. And all you can do is support them and, be there and give them the tools that they need. And, my teachers talk about their college kids, and I'm like, listen, I got asked nicely to leave University of Arkansas. So I turned out okay.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm just like, you just go through these things. And I'll never forget, my dad at the time was coaching at Arkansas Tech University, and he was also an academic counselor. And when I was asked nicely, don't worry about coming back, I had to go apply at Arkansas Tech for summer school. And I had to go in front of a board, and, I just can't. It's just one of those things where it is what it is. My journey.
But you survived. You got through it.
I did. But my dad was on the board, like on the panel, and they were like, hey, Chuck, isn't that your daughter? And he was like, not today. No, not today. She is a student that has made really bad choices, but you push on through. And that's the one thing that I can honestly say I learned from my parents the gratitude that I feel for that is just the unconditional love that they had for me when they didn't need to, or when I didn't deserve it. I will never, that's one thing that, I had a person yesterday with their students, and they were like, you just show so much grace. And I was like, what's the alternative? Like, honestly, what's the alternative? I would never just write off a student because they made bad choices. Like, that's crazy to me. And people are out there like that. That's what's sad.
Yes, they are. They sure are.
Yeah, but the amount of gratitude that I have, especially my family, never giving up on me. I think that for me, they obviously saw something in me that I had lost, and I found. I was really kind of nervous about coming on here just because it's one thing to have a conversation with, a sponsee or just a friend, but this is definitely something that I've always wanted to do. I think it'd be awesome. Like, I'm like, a podcast? Sure. But, I'm also very proud of you for the journey that you've had and your willingness to put yourself out there and share your story. And I think that you have a platform, and I think that the people that you touch and inspire I think it's amazing. It's so broad. I think that's what's so great, So I'm proud of you as well. But I always told my mom, she would be like, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud. And I was like, Mom, don't be too proud because I'm just one drink away.
Oh, yeah.
Because, that's it,
It is.
And she didn't understand that, but, we do.
We get it. We get it. And that's the thing. Yeah, it's a different level of understanding. But I think also part of why I share the story and I have guests on that, we do recover, so don't give up, but also we can be pretty high functioning and carry on, and to the outside world think, well, look at them, they've got a master's and a job and this and this and this, when really that's not what was going on inside. So portraying kind of different images of what people may think and different versions of rock bottom and recovery and just moving forward.
I think in my journey, I've learned that it's okay to not be okay. I think for such a long time, and I still do this. I'm very guilty of, they always joke at school because I'll be like, well, it could be worse. Or a kid brings a little knife to school and I'm like, it could be worse. It could have been a machete. Or, I'm like.
The level of perspective.
And that's just what I do.
Yeah, I think it could be worse. The level of perspective, I think, unfortunately, that bad things show you is, a knife, all the things that happen, y'all don't know. And so when people, would maybe freak out about a kid cussing them out or something, I'm like, okay, that is sit next to someone dying of cancer. I don't think this is earth shattering right here. Right. But it's that perspective that until you've gone through terrible things.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think you grasp. And some people don't ever get it. You just continue on. And I just know I had to do things differently.
And I totally agree. And I am truly grateful for those things. When I get up in the morning, my feet hit the floor and I just thank you for another day. That's one of the things when I first at my elementary school where I am now, I had kids come in and I'm always at the door and I'm saying, hey, good morning, good morning. And I'll never forget this little 5th grade girl came in and she was just having a bad day. And I was like, hey, good morning. And she was like, no, it's not. And I remember looking at her and I was like, whoa. I go, hey, what happened? Are you okay? And she was like, it's just I had to wake up. And I was like, oh, whoa. No, you got to wake up. Yeah. And she looked at me. And when I worded it like that, she was like, oh. I go, you got to put your feet on the ground. And she looked at me and she was like, oh, I didn't even think of it that way. And so every day for she was 5th grade. So the whole year I'd be like, hey, how are you doing today? And she was like, I'm good. And I'm like, why? And she goes, because I woke up. And I was like, that's right. It's all about perspective.
Absolutely. So I'm big on routines and kind of how you approach the day. And so what are your kind of go-tos of keeping you going?
When I wake up in the morning, I always, and this is just something I've done forever, I just say the prayer of Jabez, just Lord, help me out. Do what you got to do. Bless me, enlarge my territory, keep your hand on me. Don't let me cause anybody any pain. Because that's as someone in recovery, if I think that I've done anything, I'm quick to be like, hey, that's not my intention, so it just kind of covers me. My goal, since now I live closer to work, because Nova and I just moved to where the city where I work. I really want to start walking. I've seen your stuff, like you get out and you exercise, air, all that stuff, and I don't do enough of that. And so that's something that I really want to work on. That's something I want to be intentional about, and just to make myself feel better. Prior to this, we'd get home and it'd be 7 o'clock at night, and I'm like, I'm tired, and I don't want to. I want more.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Man, and I can feel it when I have a few days or week without getting outside. Man, I can feel it. It's key for me. And also incorporate music and all of that. So do you have go-to song, books?
Oh yeah. You know that I love to dance. I've always loved to dance. I still love to dance. If there's music on, I'm dancing. And it embarrasses Nova to no end. But, I'm like, you only live once. Like, it's happening. But I like any kind of like something that's got an upbeat. But like if I were to have and this is kind of I took your questions and kind of had my top 5.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But Brandy Carlisle it's an old song. It's The Story. And it literally, I feel like sometimes when I listen to it, I'm like, did she write this for me? I just sometimes talking about the gray and the lines across my face. And I mean, I'm not a young chicken anymore, but there's something about that song that just resonates with me. And, and Nova even, she loves it and she sings it.
Perfect.
Yep. But anything with an upbeat that I can best to move to, I'm good.
Well, movement's so important. It really is. And I think that's the thing is people aren't runners or walk or whatever. Find the activity that brings you joy and that you enjoy doing and do it. Yeah. Don't stop doing it. Don't stop dancing. It's good for not only physically, but your soul.
And it just, the music comes on and I'm out dancing when in the car pick or the drop off line. And I just, dance with the kids and they just think it's hilarious. Just you got to do it.
Yeah. Do you have a slogan, a motto? Just do it seems to be mine at times because that's the other piece.
Mine,
action.
So Bill Belichick had, I love the Patriots. I know. But Bill Belichick would say, just do your job. And honestly, it can be anything. Just do your job. Nova's like, what do I need to do? Just do your job. Just do it. Like you said, just do it. It's not hard. I have found that it takes more effort to not do your job than to actually do it. You have to talk yourself up to, different things and just do it. Just do your job. Yep.
Yes, I repeat that often. That is my favorite, definitely Bill quote, but just really probably any coach quote. I repeat it often. And sometimes I'm saying it to other people, but it's to me. No, just do your job, stay in your lane. Good deal. Okay.
Most definitely. And when I was in the classroom, I would have it was just one rule. And it was talking about the integrity. It was just integrity is doing the right thing, even when people aren't watching you. And kids would be like, well, that's not, and I'm like, well, let's think about it. Let's go down these lists and, is this showing good integrity? And they'd be like, oh yes. And I was like, well, it's the same. It's definitely just goes back to just do the right thing. Just do it.
Yep. Stands the test of time for sure. Well, You are definitely doing it for your daughter, for your students, and for everyone. And I am so grateful for you coming on and sharing your journey and helping others just through your experiences.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And this has been definitely a top 5 experience.
Well, good. We're going to have many more experiences.
Perfect. I love it.
Thank you for joining another episode of Midlife Catalyst, a place where ordinary people share extraordinary stories of change at any age or stage of life. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure and hit the like button, give us a follow, and subscribe so that you never miss a moment of the podcast episode. You never know where I may be or what I might say, so you don't want to miss a moment of the podcast episode. If this episode resonated with you, be sure and leave a comment and let me know what part you enjoyed. Leave a comment or a review and let me know what resonated with you. Be sure to share the episode with a friend that you think might benefit from today's topic. I'm Amanda Younts, and as always, I am grateful for you coming along on this journey with me as I am learning to fly and find the place where I feel free. Remember, AI can do a lot, but it cannot write your life story. Be the author of your own narrative and make sure you are the CEO of your own life. Be sure and join us next time on the Midlife Catalyst Podcast. And for more resources or links in regards to today's episode, go to midlifecatalyst.net or subscribe to my Substack, amandayounts.substack.com, for a wealth of extras and insight. Thanks for joining.